Okay. To be continued. Okay, so before I go to bed, allow me to regale you with one final rant on this. So, I have thoughts of what a proper game should be. And obviously, everything is subjective. There's no saying that I'm any more correct than any other person who, goes through a game and has completely different opinions. I know for a fact that there are plenty of times where someone will enjoy a time limit type thing or a race challenge or mini games or all these things that I am very hard on and very critical of. So I'm not saying I am correct. I'm not saying in any way that I know better than anyone. I'm not a game designer. I've done little bits with programming. I've learned little bits of writing, all the different things that make up a game designer. But I'm by no means a game designer. I don't know the intricacies. I don't know how much frustration you get as the developer on, oh, this is boring like this, or oh, this feels so redundant. There are probably plenty of reasons to get you in the mindset where, oh, okay, I'll add a different type of challenge and maybe it will be refreshing for people. That's acceptable. I'm 100% certain that I'm not the be all end all audience for any game that has ever been made. I'm not the target audience. I'm very critical. I have lots of opinions and I'm outspoken on a lot of those opinions when I'm in the comfortable mood. When it comes to games, commenting on a stream, I'm in a comfortable mood to make my thoughts heard. One of those opinions, I believe in my heart of hearts, is that you have to have some sort of feeling of reward. And in this case, the reward isn't there for me. That's what I'm saying. So at the end, it's my personal feeling that reward doesn't come from me. Some people will be like, yes, I got it, I did the thing, I learned the puzzle, and I learned how to do it fast. That's fine. So I've got all that out of the way. From my perspective, the time limit puzzle does nothing but slow down the pace of gameplay in this experience. I'm already not a fan of races. I'm already not a fan of time trials. I'm not a fan of any of that type of stuff in games, personally. But that aside, in this particular experience and the way it's executed, while it's fitting with the context of the level, what you're doing, where everything has to do with time being manipulated, I still feel like its execution is either too pixel perfect on a couple of them, especially that one where you're racing and you have to get the positions right. I saw the very first time when I went in the room basically what had to be done. And even though I understood it and felt like I was doing all the steps I needed to do, the time window was so close that it got exhausting on a couple of. I almost rage quit. And I've done it a couple times with games, that's totally fair. I'm an impatient person. That's a totally legitimate criticism to levy at me. I'm well aware of it. That's why there's a lot of games I won't play. That's why I won't do competitive things, because I get too impatient, too frustrated, and too angry, and I think it takes the fun away from other people. So I'd rather pull myself out from that position and not ruin the experience for other people. But this is me streaming a game for the audience I believe I have brought to this world. And so I'm basing it off of my experience with what I find enjoyable as a viewer of people who play video games. And when it comes to Cow, when it comes to several other creators who I've watched over the years, but probably first and foremost Cow, I've made this comment to him numerous times. I don't like it when people play rage games. I don't like it when people get angry or frustrated or annoyed. It pulls me out of having fun. The whole reason I'm watching someone play a game is to have fun. I know there's some people who get some weird schadenfreude out of it. Watching someone get angry when they lose in a game, or watching someone get angry and frustrated when they're confused. I'm not one of those people, and I don't want my games on my channel to be that. That's why I won't play things like I Want to Be the Guy. I won't play games like Minecraft Parkour or anything of that sort. I limit the games to things I think I can play. You won't see me play Dark Souls. If Izzy wants to play it when he's over, that's fine. It's not really my type of game, but if he wants to play, I'm not going to stop him because he might bring an appeal to the channel, but I don't. That's fine. For me personally, I don't enjoy it. I don't find it fun to watch people get angry. I don't find it fun to watch people lose. I if I could watch someone go through flawlessly and blind play a game, that would be a great appeal to me. But I know that that's an impossibility. I want to see someone having fun when they play games. And so that's why it bothers me so much that I get this frustrated with something. This is a game with really real, I suppose, seeming characters. Everyone has a personality. Everyone has quirks and traits, and everyone has a believability to them that's not common in games. I've played plenty of games where the characters feel generic. And there's ones in here, like the generic NPCs and the shopkeepers. As I said, I want them to be the game mechanics in the game. I don't want to have long dialogues with people if it's pausing me from doing the things I'm trying to do. So that's fine. But the actual characters, the ones who are relevant to the plot, the ones that are significant, are great characters. I really do care about the characters. I find the characters are formed well. I was mad at the end of this when I saw Daniel probably killed. I wasn't surprised. I was disappointed. Um, I feel like it's the most warranted death so far. It seems like the least cheap shot. Because it seems like he's sacrificing himself because he knows it's the only option. And I think it's, a fitting death. It sucks. But you can't just have nobody die in games that have high stakes. So I get it. I care about the characters. I think they're written well. And so when there's things that pull me out of that, that's not fun. I don't want the game. I mean, again, there's no problem with having challenge in the game. Don't get me wrong with that. And again, not every game's for me. That's why I say Dark Souls may be a 5-star perfect amazing game for them. Challenge is not something I think is unacceptable in a game. I don't like necessarily when there's gatekeepers who say that an easy mode subtracts from a game. I think that's a little bit, crappy because like this, I want to experience the story. I want to experience what this game brings to the table. And so the idea of limiting things like that to me is that I don't get behind that mindset. I get why some people might get irritated because they feel like someone's, you know, watching it like a movie, but that's what Let's Plays are anyway. So to me, that seems like a non-point. Um, but even so, I know enough about games, and I've played enough games to know when something feels wrong. At least from my perspective, I can point out the things where it feels wrong. And those time trials, for example, just feel wrong. They don't feel like the game is set up to make them their best. It doesn't from the beginning set you with a bunch of time limits, which I'm glad of. I'm very glad of that. But it doesn't prepare you to have to race those puzzles. There's a few times where you have to hit buttons and you have to time them, and that's fun. I got irritated at those too, but again, I mean, it's not forbidden. And I guess what I would think in a case like this is have a regular and a hard mode, where maybe the timers, for example, would be a little narrower. Because as it is, some of those timers feel just a little too precise for me. Especially, like I said, that last one most of all. The others I can get by. But the other thing is, especially in cases like this, where I was nervous to hit that restart level button because I didn't want to send me all the way back to the beginning. That was something I could have experimented with, but I didn't. I don't like where you just get stuck waiting. If you can manually restart there, that's fine. That's a fair criticism. That's on me. I didn't want to take that risk, and that's my fault, and that's fine. But if that's not the case, that's absolutely a criticism. Even without it, it feels like busy work when you're doing the same thing over and over again like that, in those small redundant packages, especially. Um, Having to restart things is such a touchy thing. It comes from going back in games quite a bit, where you can't have no punishment for not doing what you're supposed to. It's not bad on that front. And I'm trying my best to defend this in every way I can because I do get it. It's not like you can subtract all of the failure conditions for a failure. But it just, I don't know. That type of gameplay, personally, for me, draining and unfun. That's my stance on it, and I can completely accept that that may just be me. Maybe me is the only person in the whole world. That's fine. From my perspective, those timers, for example, are just not fun. Exploration-based things, as critical as I'm being of it, I understand that's how the games work. An exploration game, there are some exploration games where you just can miss stuff. That happens. But I more enjoy it when it's something like Banjo-Kazooie, where there's just a collect everything and you can go back for it when you need to. But I understand that part of exploration games is sometimes that's not how they're designed. And it looks like with this little level select thing, maybe I can just go back and 100% it on this file and not have to do the whole game over again. That's fine. There's plenty of qualifiers for that. That's all accepted. It's irritating to me, but I accept that that's part of the way a game is. With the mini games, they're mini games. I understand why mini games are in a game because they add variety to the gameplay style. But a lot of times with mini games, to me, it just feels like a distraction, and a lot of times they don't feel fun. The mini games in this, for example, I don't really find any of them stand out as fun. There's been mini games in games that I've enjoyed a lot. If you go back to Pokemon Stadium 1, I can't stand the main game. But there's the Sushi Go Round Lickitung game. I love it. I'm obsessed with that when I play that game. I really like that game. I find it fun. I can play it 7,000 times, even though it's not a very long game and there's not really that much variety from one round to the next. Mini games can work. They can absolutely work, and they might win the hearts of someone more than the actual game. That's an acceptable thing. But there's a big risk, and I mentioned it as a completely legitimate criticism in some games where the mini games are bad. Because there are plenty of games that have bad mini games. If the mini game's mechanics don't mesh with the mechanics that you set up in your game, it can really risk feeling like it's a chore, especially if it's a mandatory mini game in something. Like I got over it with the fishing in a lot of games because so many games use the same type of fishing mechanic with the moving bar and you have to match up on. I made peace with it. That's how that is. But it can feel really irritating. It's not the best example. To me, the best example is something like in Final Fantasy IX, the majority of the game is an RPG with Final Fantasy style leveling and item. But you have to play this card game in it that I find super unentertaining and super unintuitive. I don't find it fun, and it's a good example. I never finished that. Even though the mandatory points are mostly just learning how to do that, I think there's like one boss fight or something I have to do something before. But I mean, that wasn't the only reason I didn't finish that game. That's just a part of one of the things that where it bored me, and those tutorials and stuff, it just wasn't fun. Um, and then another good example is we've come so far over time. Where in DK64, having to play the original Donkey Kong twice to finish the game almost made me never ever even get past the third world. That's how frustrating that was. And I really like a lot of things about DKC. It's definitely aged more poorly than Banjo-Kazooie. But there were a lot of things I used to like about DKC, especially the characters, quirkiness, and some of the, puzzles and stuff were fun. You have to be really careful with minigames that they fit comfortably, not just from a I've been playing this for so long standpoint that it's already wrote in your memory, but for a regular player standpoint. It's like one of the things I'm looking at right here. This is a popular game that's been around for how long? When did this game first get added to Steam? Eastward. Eastward was added to Steam September 16th. Okay, so that explains that. I'm gonna say, if it's only been 2 weeks, or like 2 months, then I can understand. Absolutely understand that a lot of people haven't made it past chapter 7. That's understandable. Um, so that doesn't count in this case. But I've seen games where the game is a game I would say is wonderful. A game that I like the story to, or the game where there were aspects of the gameplay that I enjoyed that gets to a point where there's a hiccup. Stop playing it. And I've seen that there's a large percentage of people who haven't finished the game also. I know a really good example of a mechanic that worked against the game so much that actually when I commented to the developer that I'd finished the game, they were surprised that I'd finished the game. That is Rebuild 3. Rebuild 3 is a 4X game where to get the good ending relies on a lot of luck and a lot of frustration. I really, really was mad when I finished that game. I ranted at the end of that game. And I loved the first two. I finished both of them relatively thoroughly. I did all there was to do. So getting the good ending of that meant something to me because I'd been there for that series. I'd done the other. And I really wanted to get the good ending because to me that's the only reason to do good ending. The luck based things in it and the having to do like very specific things you never know without looking at a guide was infuriating me. And especially when it comes down to either the game ends with no real reward, again going back to hope versus hopelessness, and how much I hate hopelessness in games. The only ending that's a positive ending being luck based, where you have to do the same map numerous times, ridiculous. And I was very critical. Um, I've actually had a couple times where I've said how frustrated I was with the game to the developers because I was so upset with it. I've ran it on this channel on a few. I ran it on Baba Is You and I never finished it because some of the puzzles were too cramped or frustrating or irritating, or even if I kind of saw what I had to do, I didn't find it enjoyable enough to go and finish it. There were a couple of them where I just dropped it. And let's see, what other games? played. I think I listed and already played the one I was back to. We almost did that with Anarchy. There were a couple of levels in that even Izzy wasn't patient enough to keep going with. Plague Inc. is supposed to be hard, and there's no real end, so it's neither here nor there. If Stasis has a second ending, that might make it better, but if it only has the one ending, it's hopeless since at the end. I understand that it's a dystopian sci-fi, but still. Jump Jet Rex almost had Izzy quit, and I'll tell you right now, if Izzy feels like quitting the game, that says a lot for how unfun it's getting, because Izzy's very, very patient. Very patient. That's one of the biggest things with him, where I'm like watching, I'm like, dude, I did this so long ago. He wants to prove he can do it. And that's an example of why it's fine to me that sometimes a game doesn't work for me. It's fine, because it might work for somebody else. We did that with DuckTales. We ended up abandoning DuckTales because it was too Nintendo hard, which it's from the Nintendo era, so that's not surprising. I think Shin was going to be that way with One Shot. I think that some of the puzzles in One Shot almost got him ready to quit because he was irritated with them. But yeah, so we've played and finished a lot of games, and I've probably had a few at this point where I've gone through and oh yeah, where we've gone through and at the end I didn't feel satisfied. We've had plenty of games where we tried them and we stopped them, which I hate doing, but if we're not having fun, I'm not going to force us to. I told Chin that before when the biggest thing was I told him that with games, I'd like to finish as many of the games as we can. Because one of the things that annoys me the most about game is start a game and just don't ever end it. I feel like a game has a lot of value in demonstrating your experience versus someone else. That's one of the best things I like about a Let's Play. Is you get someone else's perspective on it. Because again, someone else's experience of what I think is bad might show me, hey, you know, I was wrong. That's really good. That's clever. That's cool. But I guess this whole rant, what I'm trying to say is, it's okay for a person to get irritated at the game. That's totally fine. I don't find it fun to Let's Play. And I don't want it to be something that I make the norm on my channel, especially. But it's not always just the player's fault. It absolutely can be the player's fault. I mean, if the developer has made a game, played it, and finished it, then clearly it's possible. So it's not impossible. If it is impossible, then that's a sin on the developer. But while every failure in a gameplay is to some extent the player's fault, that they're not, you know, perfect reaction time, inhuman, perfect at gameplay. That's fine. But there are certain times where there's more fault on the developer than on the player. I would never say that my particular experience is a perfect example of my experience being more real than the developer. The developer may have had a million people say, oh, hey, that part was really fun. And me be the one odd one out. That's why I said before, I'm not the whole audience of any game. But from my perspective, I feel like things like timers in games where they're not centered around it, like time puzzles, it really just can feel awkward. There are certain times where, especially if you have to deal with geometry, like walking into the side of that tunnel twice and screwing up the path really pissed me off because there was no reason for that to be an obstruction. and it was an obstruction, and to me that did feel a little bit like a developer mistake. Catching on the side of a small piece of geometry in a place where that's not a maze necessarily is irritating to say the least. But more than anything, it's understandable, um, but not necessary. That was a thing where, and I get, and I'm sure there's people yelling at the video. I get having looked back at it afterwards, especially by the way that I did the exact opposite of the mistake with John. I understand that I could have gone to the left and probably avoided that whole stupid situation. It still didn't feel fun. It might have made that whole thing's timing better. It might have made the whole thing much less of a cramped and frustrating situation. I admit that I made mistakes. It just, that mechanic in any game doesn't feel fun. I've had plenty of games with times where I didn't like it. In fact, that's one thing that ruined DK64 for me. In DK64, the final world has a time limit. And it's not even that severe of a time limit at the point where you get all the blueprints, because it doubles it, and it's possible to do without the doubled time. So you have a lot of time. But just the timer being on was enough to make it stressful enough that I would stop playing. And again, I'm not everybody, and there's been plenty of people who beat that game. Plenty of people who 100%ed it. So it's not impossible. But as a developer, I'm imagining most people don't want someone just to stop playing the game. There might be some people who, it's not their bag, whatever. But when you have someone who gets all the way to the end of a game and stops playing, I feel like at that point there might be something questionable going on. Sometimes it's just someone's not good enough. That's how it is. That's why I don't do many secret bosses. We've never done Finger X. I don't do secret bosses because there's a whole lot of deviant involved, I guess is the right word. Secret bosses actually to me would be a thing I could rant about because they're almost always designed to be so difficult it's not fun. Which again goes back to my criticism. There's gonna be the people who want to hit that bragging rights goal, and so it's there for a reason. But in a game, especially if it has achievements, I can get it that people want that rare achievement that makes them feel special. But to me, it sullies it because I do like to try and get 100%, and then you put something in that just to me feels like busy work or feels deliberately unreachable. It feels more like taunting than gameplay. And so, I don't know, I've ran it for like, I guess the biggest thing I think is I get that I'm definitely not the perfect gamer by any means. I try my best not to solo games if I can. I try to stick to only doing these more story-based games because at least if they're the story-based games, it's because I want to get that story out there. Because I think there's value to that story being out there. And some people aren't going to want to play games or can't afford to play games, but I want them to experience what they can. So that's fine. That's on me. I'm the one saddling that on my shoulders. I don't play every game on here, and I try my best not to play them alone because I don't want to bore people, and I don't want to have the risk of sacrificing quality because I know I'm not a good person when it comes to a lot of games. Um, but even with me not being particularly good at games, I can still see where things feel awkward. And to me, and again, it might just be me personally, I don't know how many times I'm going to say this, how many times I'm going to rant the same rant on it. those time trials, for example, just didn't feel like a fun addition to the game. There were a lot of great things. I guess that's how I want to end this. I want to talk about some of the really good things. Kind of like how I said. I already went over, the good character writing, and I kind of touched on the artwork and everything is really nice. In fact, the artwork in this is so nice, I wouldn't mind seeing more areas in this universe just based on the artwork that is visible. I think there's a really fascinating amount of beauty, and there could be a whole world there with a whole different set of stories going on just because I like that world. The artwork is really, really top notch. I think that going through, I didn't see anything that I was like, oh, that looks really ugly in like a not well made sense. I didn't even see anything that felt kind of awkward for the most part. Everything really looked very, very beautiful. All the animations are really smooth. Everything has enough frame that doesn't feel jagged or janky. There's a wide variety of character designs. There's a whole lot of different art for art's sake things. I mean, other than having a whole bunch of things to collect in your inventory for an achievement, you don't need to have all those different fruits and vegetables, but they're there to add some variety and beauty. And those are things I really do appreciate. Going above and beyond where it's not necessary. Adding some things that are really just flavorful to add character to the the music, I kind of touched on it. There's some beautiful music in this game. There's music on this that I could see myself listening to while I'm driving. There's music in this that I could see myself even probably listening to while I'm driving, which I haven't had a whole lot of chiptune when I drive, but it's not because I'm against it, it's just I haven't put it on my phone or on my MP3 player before. Um, the layouts on everything seems intuitive. There's no kind of weird overlapping locations according to how the map works. All the tiling seems good. I found a couple kind of funky glitches, I suppose. Like, here was an error in my mind that did benefit me, but it still felt like an error. Being able to stand right up there at the edge on those icicle things and not get hit, and just being able to just basically cheese that fight, that seemed a little bit like a mistake. I feel like those icicles are supposed to hit a little higher up. So that worked in my favor, but it did still seem like a bit of an oversight. Um, None of the boss fights have felt unfair. None of the challenges felt like, well, except for the ones that I've mentioned. A lot of the other stuff, though, that I've done, nothing felt really stupid. Um, the functions of the puzzles and the kind of cleverness of some of the puzzles is really rewarding. A couple of the mini games, like I didn't mind the wrangling mini game and those felt fine to me, and they felt contextually sensible. Which again, the timer makes contextual sense. I just feel like some of the timers are slightly too unforgiving. I could even say that. I concede you could have those racing things in the game. I don't think that all the timers are the best, especially that last couple feel a little bit just too over precise. And again, it might have been because I was trying to go the wrong way on the platform. I don't know. It might have been much easier if I went the other way. I have no idea because I didn't do it. I didn't think about it until after I was done. I overthought the thing, and that might have been on me. Again, I'm willing to concede that because I'm not the best gamer. I would never claim to be the best gamer. The baseball minigame, I get kind of what it is. There is a reward, but one, the reward doesn't seem that worth it for what you're doing. And two, some of the things in the little baseball game feel a little too clunky. I guess one of the only real standard gameplay mechanics within when you're on just real time that I don't like is the aiming feels a little janky. It's never, other than again when you have a timer and you're trying to hit a thing around the corner, um, it never feels um, unenjoyable. It just feels a little irritating or you're wasting a little bit of your time, but not nearly as large time as the timer rewinding you all the way back to the section. Um, the um, the baseball thing, the aiming just feels a little weird. And again, it might even be this controller. I don't know. Generally, though, it wasn't one of the better things to me in the game. I guess my only other kind of major gameplay complaint besides this rant I've done is, as I said, these shoulder buttons seem backwards to me when it comes to your switching. To me, the bumper should be to switch characters, and the trigger should be to switch weapons. And I feel like the weapon menu is slightly clunky when you're doing stuff. I prefer if it opened two circles, like in shooters where you have your little dial where you can pick your weapon. If it had two circles, the right control stick picks the main weapon and the left control stick picks the bomb. That would be a good design to me in that. I don't know how fitting it would be with the keyboard setup, but you have to make it compatible for both computer games. So I get that. I guess you could do it with WASD and arrow keys maybe. Because there's never more than four, so you only need up, down, left, and right. You don't need to use the number pad for anything. Um, the um, that menu though I think is the thing that's giving me the most trouble. I can probably point out in every single episode that I've uploaded at least one point where those menus have screwed me up. The other thing is the character splitting being on B. I bump B a lot very easily. I wish there were another button for it. I don't know if there is. Maybe these triggers, since they're not used a whole lot. I did never use healing items enough to justify using this bumper much. I just pause and pick them most of the time. Um, just something where it's not so easy to bump with the character switching because it's just right there. And there were several times where I ran off and didn't even realize I left one of my characters behind. And sometimes it got me hurt when I wish I hadn't done. I kind of almost wish the accept button was switched here, but it's not that big a deal. It's not so unintuitive that I can't get used to it a little bit. The drop the bomb special button I make mistakes with sometimes, but it's not huge, except for when I leave the bombs behind. I keep going back to pick them up, which again was mostly annoying during the timer thing. But the motion feels comfortable. You're going at a decent enough pace most of the time where the movement is good, and that's a criticism I have even for some of my favorite games. Undertale and Raccoon, both you feel so sluggish when you're moving that it can really pull you out of it. And I don't like that. This game, on the other hand, does it nicely. I think that your movement speed overall is pretty comfortable paced for the size of the areas you're moving across. I feel like that, while that seems like a small thing in a game, is a significant thing. I think it's something that really doesn't matter. Um, Generally, your movement feels pretty comfortable. Um, There's a lot of logic in why you can and can't do a bunch of things. They're established pretty clearly. Most of your control and gameplay logic fits and makes sense. Certain things that one can do, certain things that the other can do. I get from the start why they are the way they are, and it all makes sense. I think that's good, because there are plenty of games, again, where you just have restrictions that are arbitrary, or there's no real thing, like the original endings to Fallout 3, making it so that um, you have to die when you have a character who's immune to radiation, um, was kind of a dumb decision logically. And so that, for example, to me was very poor scripting in the game. This, all of the things that are restricted to one character or the other feel exactly fit. And so again, that's a good point in this game. There are plenty of things I want to sing praise about, and I really want to emphasize that. I also want to emphasize I care enough about this game that I slogged through that part as much as I didn't like it, and I still want to finish the game. It's a good game overall. There's plenty of great qualities that really redeem even some of the more awkward mistakes in this game. But even though I'm harsh on it, probably harsher than any of the games I've said that I like, and I think some of them are even still fairly fixable if the game's that new. Um, and again, it might even still just be me. But even with all that said, I still find the game is a good game. I feel like this definitely fits under my good storytelling, great characters kind of qualities that I really appreciate in my favorite games. It's just that it has some things that really are pulling me out of it. So I'm making this kind of heart to heart to no one that probably no one will see, ranting to nobody in my room talking to myself because it frustrates me that much. But I understand that I'm not the only person who's playing games, so that's fair. But I didn't want it to seem like just because I went on this tirade I should, even though maybe no one ever thought that. I mean, maybe no one will ever even see this. I don't know. But I still want to emphasize, I think there's a really good thing here with this game. I think there's a lot of charm. I think there's definitely a lot of passion. This is not a lazy game. There's a lot of ambition that goes into this. There's a lot of hard work. There's just some things that I personally find kind of weak. So I want to end on that I really do like the game and think there's a lot of great in it. It just has some things that could be fixed. Um, so that's enough ranting. I'm way past my bedtime. I should have been doing Java by now. But that's on me. So I'm gonna end it here. I'm going to see if there's anyone to raid. Like ringers on. Like Andy went to bed. So let's see ringer here. I'll raid ringer with my whole me and probably nobody else. If it'll load, it looks like a minute. Getting some sort of issue. I've been playing since 8 hours. I do it. Um, this vacation's been really good. I wish I could be like this all the time. I wish I could have friends I want to hang out with, and that I could do this for a living. Obviously, that's not going to be the case. I don't even know if anyone's going to hear this right now. I have really enjoyed this time off, though. I've played some fantastic games. Getting to do throughout this last little over a month. Some very, very touching, good storytelling games. I'm happy. This is what I want to share with the world. I want to share with the world how great of quality there can be in these more story focused games. Obviously, you don't have to have a game with a great story for it to be a good game. But I really, really do like a good story. It really pulls me in personally. These are the kind of games I care the most about. Why I wish I had someone else I could share the experience with so it wasn't just me doing them. But, it happens. So maybe over time I'll find someone else who can join in and have an additional co-streamer who wants to do these with me, but if not, it'll be me and the maybe one person who sees this out. That'll be it. I have to get to bed. I'm still ranting. With that said, it looks like my internet's just not gonna let me join anyone. So I'm gonna just raid Ringer. I'm not even gonna be able to see that I raided Ringer because connection. It at least makes people feel good to see it. So why not? Thank you guys for watching. Have a good day, afternoon, morning, wherever you are. See you again real soon. Take care.